Jenna Blackwood stood at the gates of the Crimson Academy, her heart pounding as she gazed up at the towering spires carved from volcanic rock. The ancient structure rose from the mountainside like a living flame, its surfaces gleaming with veins of molten gold that pulsed with inner fire. She clutched her acceptance letter tightly. The parchment warmed to the touch even in the cool mountain air. The Academy had never accepted a human student before. For 3,000 years, it had remained the exclusive domain of dragonkind, training the finest warriors and scholars of their race. Yet here she was, the first human to pass their impossible entrance trials, about to step into a world where she would be utterly alone among beings who could incinerate her with a single breath. Second thoughts, little flame? The voice rumbled from above, and Jenna looked up to see a massive red dragon perched on one of the Academy's towers. His scales shimmered like rubies in the morning sunlight, and his golden eyes held a mixture of curiosity and amusement. This was Master Korith, the combat instructor whose reputation struck fear into the hearts of even the bravest dragon cadets. "None whatsoever, Master Korith," Jenna replied, straightening her shoulders. She had practiced this moment 100 times, knowing that her first impression would determine how the rest of her time here would unfold. The dragon's laugh was like distant thunder. "We shall see, human child. We shall see." As Jenna passed through the gates, she felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. Dragon cadets in their humanoid forms clustered in small groups throughout the courtyard, their conversations dying as she walked by. Some watched with open hostility, others with mere curiosity, but all with the same underlying message. She did not belong here. The interior of the Academy was even more magnificent than the exterior. Corridors carved from living rock stretched in all directions, lit by crystals that captured and held dragonfire. Ancient tapestries depicted the great dragon wars and legendary heroes whose names were spoken with reverence throughout the realm. The air itself seemed alive with magic, crackling with the residual energy of thousands of years of draconic presence. Jenna's quarters were in the east wing, a small but comfortable room with a window that overlooked the practice yards. As she unpacked her few belongings, she could hear the sounds of training below, the clash of weapons, the roar of flames, and the thunderous impact of dragons in their true forms engaging in aerial combat. Her first class was dragon history, taught by the ancient scholar Master Pyrian. The classroom was a circular chamber with tiered seating arranged around a central platform, where holographic displays could show historical events in vivid detail. Jenna took a seat near the back, hoping to avoid attention, but her presence was impossible to ignore. "Before we begin today's lesson," Master Pyrian announced, his voice carrying despite his advanced age, "I would like to acknowledge our newest student. Miss Blackwood represents a historic moment for this academy, and I trust you will all conduct yourselves with the honor befitting your noble heritage." A young dragon woman with silver hair and piercing blue eyes turned to stare at Jenna. This was Zara Nightfall, daughter of one of the most powerful dragon clans. Her beauty was legendary, even among dragonkind, but her expression held nothing but cold disdain. "Tell us, human," Zara said, her voice carrying the musical quality common to her kind, "what makes you think you belong among your betters? Surely you must realize that this academy has maintained its standards for millennia without need for charity cases." The classroom fell silent. Every eye was on Jenna, waiting to see how she would respond to this direct challenge. She could feel her cheeks burning, but she kept her voice steady. "I earned my place here the same way everyone else did," Jenna replied. "Through the trials. If the Academy's standards accepted me, perhaps the question isn't whether I belong, but whether those standards are as absolute as you believed." Zara's eyes flashed with anger, but before she could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "Enough." Prince Theron stood from his seat near the front of the class, his presence commanding immediate attention. Tall and powerfully built even in human form, he possessed the kind of natural authority that came from royal blood. His dark hair caught the light like obsidian, and his green eyes held depths that spoke of ancient wisdom despite his relatively young age. This is a place of learning, not petty squabbles. We have more important matters to discuss than who does or doesn't deserve to be here. Zara's expression softened immediately when she looked at Theron, and Jenna realized there was history between them. The prince was not just making a statement about academy decorum. He was protecting her, though his motivations remained unclear. Master. Pyrian cleared his throat and began the day's lesson about the Great Alliance Wars, when dragons and humans had fought side by side against the Shadow Realm invasion. As he spoke, Jenna found herself stealing glances at Prince Theron, wondering why he had chosen to defend her against someone who was clearly important to him. The rest of the morning passed without incident, but lunch proved to be another challenge. Entirely. The great dining hall buzzed with conversation in a dozen different languages, as dragons from various clans and territories mingled together. Jenna stood in the doorway with her tray, looking for an empty table where she might eat in peace. "You can sit with us," came a gentle voice behind her. She turned to see Prince Theron, accompanied by a small group of his friends. "Unless you prefer to eat alone, of course." "I wouldn't want to impose," Jenna said carefully, aware that accepting his invitation would likely make her more enemies than friends. "Nonsense." Theron smiled, and for the first time since arriving at the academy, Jenna felt genuinely welcome. "Besides, I'm curious about human perspectives on our shared history. Your people fought alongside ours in the old wars, yet so few remember those alliances today." As they walked to his table, Jenna noticed the mixture of reactions from other students. Some looked disapproving, others seemed merely surprised, but Zara's glare could have melted steel. Jenna began to understand that her presence at the academy was about to complicate relationships that had been years in the making. Theron's friends were polite but reserved, clearly unsure how to interact with a human. The conversation was stilted, at first revolving around safe topics like upcoming examinations and weather patterns. But gradually, as Jenna demonstrated her knowledge of dragon culture and history, the atmosphere began to relax. "You've studied our language extensively," observed Kale, a bronze-scaled dragon from the Northern Territories. "Your accent is nearly perfect." "I've been preparing for this opportunity my entire life," Jenna admitted. "Ever since I learned that the Academy might one day consider human applicants, I've devoted myself to understanding your culture. And what did you hope to gain from that understanding?" Theron asked, his green eyes fixed on her with genuine interest. Jenna considered her answer carefully. "I believe that our peoples are stronger together than apart. The old alliances proved that. But first, we need to understand each other, to see past the surface differences to the common ground." "Beneath." "Noble sentiments," came Zara's voice from behind them. She had approached their table with her own group of followers, her expression unreadable. "But understanding goes both ways, doesn't it? What do you truly know of our nature, human?" "What? Do you know of fire that burns so hot it can melt mountains? Of minds that have witnessed centuries pass like seasons? Of the responsibility that comes with such power?" The challenge in her voice was unmistakable, but Jenna sensed something deeper beneath it. This wasn't just about protecting dragon superiority. Zara was testing her, probing to see if she possessed the strength of character necessary to stand among dragonkind. "I know that power without wisdom destroys everything it touches," Jenna replied quietly. "I know that strength means nothing without the compassion to know when not to use it. And I know that the greatest dragons in history were remembered not for their might alone, but for how they chose to wield it in service of something greater than themselves." For a moment, Zara's mask slipped, and Jenna saw surprise and perhaps even grudging respect in her eyes. Then the moment passed, and the silver-haired dragon resumed her cold expression. "Pretty words," Zara said. "But words are wind, and wind feeds fire. We shall see how you fare when the flames grow too hot for human flesh to bear." With that cryptic warning, she swept away with her entourage, leaving Jenna to wonder what trials lay ahead. That afternoon brought her first combat training session with Master Korath. The practice yard was a massive circular arena carved directly into the mountainside, with viewing galleries for spectators and specialized training equipment designed to withstand dragonfire. As Jenna entered the space, she felt like a sparrow walking into a den of eagles. Master Korath stood in the center of the arena in his human form, though his presence still radiated the contained power of his true nature. Around him, 24 dragon cadets waited in various states of readiness, some in human form, others partially transformed with scales and claws visible. "Today, we practice aerial combat formations," Master Korath announced. "Partner exercises in coordinated flight patterns and synchronized flame projection." Jenna's heart sank. This was the one area where her humanity would be a complete liability. Dragons could fly, could breathe fire, could engage in three-dimensional combat that no human could hope to match. She had known this moment would come, but facing it was far more intimidating than she had imagined. "Miss Blackwood," Master Korath's voice cut through her growing anxiety, "you will partner with Prince Theron for these exercises." The pairing surprised everyone, including Jenna herself. Traditionally, the prince would have been matched with someone of equal rank and ability, likely Zara or one of the other high-born dragon cadets. By pairing him with the human student, Master Korath was making a statement, though what that statement meant remained unclear. Prince Theron approached her with an encouraging smile. "Don't look so worried. We'll work something out." As the other pairs began their transformations, filling the arena with the magnificent sight of dragons taking their true forms, Jenna felt the full weight of her limitations. These beings were living legends, creatures of myth and majesty that humans had worshipped and feared in equal measure throughout history. And here she was, trying to keep up with gods. But as Prince Theron began his own transformation, something unexpected happened. Instead of the overwhelming sense of inadequacy she had anticipated, Jenna felt a strange resonance, as if something deep within her recognized and responded to his draconic nature. His scales were deep emerald green shot, through with veins of gold, and when his great eyes fixed upon her, she felt no fear, only wonder. "You're not afraid," he said, his voice now carrying the harmonic resonance of his true form. "I should be," Jenna replied honestly, "but I'm not. I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to see this." Something passed between them in that moment, a connection that neither fully understood, but both instinctively recognized as significant. It would be the first of many such moments, though neither could have imagined where this path would ultimately lead Dot as the training session continued, with Jenna serving as ground support and tactical coordinator for their aerial maneuvers. She began to understand that her role at the academy might be different from what she had originally envisioned, but no less important. She was not here to become a dragon, but to become something entirely new, a bridge between two worlds, a translator of hearts and minds. The weeks that followed brought both triumph and turmoil for Jenna. Her academic performance exceeded all expectations, earning grudging respect from professors who had initially doubted her capabilities. In theoretical dragon studies, she demonstrated an intuitive understanding of draconic psychology that amazed even Elder Saphira, the oldest and wisest instructor at the academy. Her knowledge of ancient histories and forgotten alliances between their species often surpassed that of students who had grown up immersed in dragon culture. However, her progress in practical applications remained limited by her human physiology. Combat training with Master Korath continued to be her greatest challenge, though she had found ways to contribute that went beyond raw physical capability. Her strategic mind and ability to analyze weaknesses in real time made her an invaluable tactical advisor, even if she could never match the raw power of her draconic classmates. The most significant change, though, was in her relationship with Prince Theron. What had begun as simple kindness had evolved into something deeper and more complex. They spent hours together in the Academy's vast library, discussing philosophy and history, debating the future of human-dragon relations, and sharing stories of their respective peoples. These conversations revealed layers of depth in both of them that surprised even themselves. Theron possessed a keen intellect that matched his royal bearing, but more importantly, he had a genuine curiosity about the world beyond dragon society. He asked thoughtful questions about human culture, listened carefully to her answers, and challenged her assumptions in ways that made her think more deeply about her own beliefs. In return, Jenna found herself opening up about her dreams and fears, sharing aspects of herself she had never revealed to anyone. Their growing friendship had not gone unnoticed by the other students. Zara Nightfall watched their interactions with increasing jealousy and hostility. She had grown up expecting to eventually bond with Theron, as was traditional among dragon nobility of their respective clans. The presence of a human who seemed to command so much of his attention threatened not just her personal desires, but the very foundations of dragon social hierarchy. One evening, as Jenna was returning to her quarters from a late study session, she found Zara waiting in the corridor. Outside her room, the silver-haired dragon was in her human form, but her eyes held the predatory gleam of her true nature. "We need to talk," Zara said. Her voice deceptively calm. Jenna nodded, unlocking her door and stepping inside. She had been expecting this confrontation for weeks, knowing that her friendship with Theron would eventually force a reckoning with his intended mate. "You're playing a dangerous game, human," Zara began once they were alone. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to him?" "To all of us? I'm being his friend," Jenna replied simply. "Nothing more, nothing less." Zara's laugh was bitter. "Friend? Do you think me blind? I see how he looks at you, how he hangs on your every word. You've bewitched him somehow, turned him against his own kind." "I've done nothing but treat him with respect and honesty," Jenna said, though even as she spoke the words, she knew there was truth in Zara's accusations. Something was indeed growing between her and Theron, something that went beyond mere friendship, though neither of them had acknowledged it openly. "Respect and honesty," Zara repeated mockingly. "Pretty words that mask ugly intentions. You seek to elevate yourself by capturing a dragon prince, to use him as a stepping stone to power and influence." Jenna felt a flash of anger at the accusation. "You're wrong. I care about Theron, genuinely care about him. Not his title, not his position, but who he is as a person." "Person?" Zara's eyes blazed with fury. "He is not a person human." "He is. Dragon royalty, heir to the Emerald Throne, keeper of the ancient flames. His bloodline stretches back to the very foundations of our civilization. And you are nothing. A brief flicker of mortality that will burn out and be forgotten while he continues to shape the world for centuries to come." The words stung because they contained an uncomfortable truth. Dragons lived for thousands of years, while humans barely managed a century. Even if her feelings for Theron were reciprocated, what future could they possibly have together? "You speak of bloodlines and traditions," Jenna said quietly. "But what about choice? What about love?" Zara recoiled as if she had been slapped. "Love? You dare speak of love when you understand nothing of what it means between our kind. Dragon bonds are sacred, eternal connections that transcend your petty human emotions. What you feel is mere infatuation, the desperate grasping of a lesser being for something beyond her reach." Before Jenna could respond, a new voice entered the conversation. "That's enough, Zara." Both women turned to see Prince Theron standing in the doorway, his face dark with anger. In human form, he was imposing enough, but the barely contained power radiating from him made the room feel suddenly smaller. "Theron," Zara breathed, her entire demeanor changing instantly. "I was just trying to protect you from making a mistake that could destroy everything you've worked toward." "By threatening my friend?" Theron stepped into the room, and Jenna noticed how carefully he positioned himself between her and Zara. "By speaking to her as if she were some scheming villain instead of the remarkable woman she is?" Zara's face went pale. "Remarkable woman? Theron, listen to yourself. You're talking about a human as if she were your equal." "She is my equal," Theron said firmly. "In intelligence, in courage, in nobility of spirit. Her species is irrelevant to her worth as an individual." "Her species is everything," Zara shot back. "It determines her lifespan, her capabilities, her place in the natural order. You cannot simply ignore these realities because of some romantic fantasy." Theron was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made both women listen intently. "The natural order you speak of is changing, Zara. The old ways, the old prejudices, they're not serving us anymore. My father sees it, the council sees it, even the academy sees it, or they never would have accepted Jenna as a student. We stand at a crossroads, and we can either embrace the future or cling to a past that no longer exists. And if embracing a future means destroying our culture, our traditions, our very identity as dragons, then perhaps those things were never as strong as we believed," Theron replied. "True strength adapts and grows. It doesn't hide behind the safety of unchanging tradition." Zara stared at him for a long moment, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "You would abandon everything we are for her?" "I wouldn't abandon anything," Theron said gently. "I would expand what we are. There's a difference." Without another word, Zara turned and fled from the room, leaving Jenna and Theron alone with the weight of unspoken truths hanging between them. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," Theron said after a moment. "She's not entirely wrong," Jenna replied. "About some things, anyway. We are different species with different lifespans and capabilities. Those aren't small obstacles to overcome." Theron moved closer to her, his green eyes intense. "No, they're not. But they're not insurmountable either. My grandmother was bonded to a phoenix for 3 centuries before his flame finally dimmed. Different species, different lifespans, but their love was real, and it enriched both their lives." "A phoenix isn't human," Jenna pointed out. "Phoenixes are magical beings with their own forms of immortality. I'm mortal, Theron. I'll age and die while you're still in the prime of your life. Then we make the time we have count," he said simply. "Isn't that what love is? Choosing to value something even knowing it won't last forever?" The word hung between them, finally spoken aloud. "Love." Jenna felt her heart racing as she looked into his eyes and saw her own feelings reflected back at her. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "The best things usually are," Theron replied, reaching out to gently touch her face. "The question is, are you willing to face that danger with me?" Before she could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the academy. The deep, resonant tones indicated an emergency of the highest priority. Both Jenna and Theron rushed to the window, looking out over the practice yards, where they could see dragons taking to the air in defensive formations. "What's happening?" Jenna asked. Theron's expression had grown grim. "Those are war horns. The academy is under attack." They rushed from Jenna's quarters and joined the streams of students and faculty moving through the corridors. The ancient stones of the academy trembled under the impact of something massive, and through the windows they could see flashes of unnatural light illuminating the night sky. In the Great Hall, Captain Valdres was shouting orders to the assembled students and staff. The grizzled old dragon had seen combat in a dozen different wars, and his scarred face was set in lines of determined resolve. "Shadow wraiths have breached the outer perimeter," he announced. "This is not a drill. All students are to report to their designated safe zones immediately, while combat-qualified faculty engage the threat." The Shadow Realm. Jenna felt a chill run down her spine. She had read about these entities in her historical studies, creatures of pure malevolence that had once threatened to consume entire worlds during the Great Alliance Wars. They had been defeated centuries ago through the combined efforts of dragons, humans, and other allied species, but apparently some had survived in the deep places of the world. "I need to get to the armory," Theron said, his training as a warrior prince taking precedence over his role as student. "I'm coming with you," Jenna said immediately. "Absolutely not. This isn't a training exercise, Jenna. These things can kill you with a touch." "Then you'll need someone watching your back who thinks differently than a dragon," she countered. "Someone who can spot weaknesses you might miss." Before Theron could argue further, Master Koreth appeared beside them. The combat instructor was in partial transformation, his scales providing natural armor while retaining the mobility of humanoid form. "Prince Theron, you're needed in the Eastern Defense. Miss Blackwood, report to the safe zone immediately." "Master Koreth," Jenna began, but the old dragon cut her off. "This is not a debate, human. You have no defense against shadow magic. You would be a liability in combat. But I could help coordinate defenses, provide tactical support from the safe zone," Koreth said firmly, "where you can use the communication crystals to relay information between defense groups." It was a compromise that acknowledged her strategic abilities while keeping her out of direct danger. Jenna nodded reluctantly, knowing it was the best she could hope for Dot. As they separated, Theron caught her hand briefly. "Stay safe," he said, his eyes conveying far more than his words. "You too," she replied, squeezing his fingers before letting go. The safe zone was located in the deepest part of the academy, carved from living rock and warded with the most powerful protective spells the dragon mages could weave. As Jenna settled in with the communication equipment, she could hear the sounds of battle echoing through the stone around them. The tactical displays showed a coordinated attack by shadow wraiths on multiple fronts. These weren't random incursions, but a planned assault designed to test the Academy's defenses. As she watched the battle unfold through the eyes of Dragon Scouts, Jenna began to notice patterns in the enemy movements that the defenders seemed to be missing. "Commander Dex," she called to the human fleet officer who was coordinating with the Academy's defense, having arrived just hours before the attack. "The wraiths are using a pincer movement, but it's not what it appears to be. Look at the timing of their advances." Commander Dex, a weathered veteran with graying hair and sharp eyes, studied the displays. "You're right. This is a feint. They're drawing our forces away from something." The central spire, Jenna realized. They're going after Elder Saphira. The ancient dragon was the keeper of the Academy's most precious treasures, including artifacts from the original Alliance Wars that could be devastating in the wrong hands. If the shadow wraiths were after those relics, the implications went far beyond a simple attack on the school. "Get me a direct line to Master Koreth," Commander Dex ordered, his respect for Jenna's tactical insight clear in his voice. Dot, as Jenna coordinated the relay of information between various defense groups, she felt a strange sense of purpose settling over her. This was what she was meant to do, not just at the Academy, but in the broader conflict between order and chaos that seemed to be brewing in the world. She might not be able to breathe fire or fly on mighty wings, but she could think, plan, and see connections that others missed. The battle raged through the night, with dragons and shadow wraiths locked in deadly combat throughout the Academy's halls and courtyards. Through it all, Jenna remained at her post, her human perspective proving invaluable in predicting enemy movements and coordinating defensive responses. When dawn finally broke over the mountains, the shadow wraiths retreated to whatever dark realm had spawned them. The academy had held, though not without cost. Several dragons had been wounded, and portions of the ancient structure bore the scars of shadow magic that would take months to heal. As the all-clear signal sounded, Jenna emerged from the safe zone to find Theron waiting for her in the great hall. His armor was scorched and torn, and there was exhaustion in his green eyes, but he was alive and whole. "I heard what you did," he said as she approached. "Commander Dex says your tactical analysis saved Elder Saphira and probably the entire academy." "I just did what needed to be done," Jenna replied, though she couldn't hide her pride in having contributed meaningfully to the defense. "That's exactly what makes you remarkable," Theron said softly. "You see what needs to be done, and you do it, regardless of the personal cost or the opinions of others." As they stood together in the aftermath of battle, surrounded by dragons who were beginning to look at Jenna with something approaching respect, rather than mere tolerance, she realized that something fundamental had changed. The attack had proven that the old divisions and prejudices were luxuries they could no longer afford. The world was changing, and they would need to change with it or risk being consumed by the darkness that threatened them all. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we rebuild," Theron replied, "and we prepare for whatever comes next, together." The word carried new weight now, forged in the crucible of shared danger and mutual respect. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as partners in something greater than either could achieve alone. 3 months had passed since the Shadow Wraith attack, and the academy had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. The ancient halls now buzzed with a new energy, as dragons and the handful of humans who had arrived as exchange students worked together on projects that would have been unthinkable just a year before. Elder Saphira had established a new curriculum focused on interspecies cooperation, drawing from the tactical successes of that harrowing night when traditional boundaries had proven inadequate. Against a common enemy, Jenna found herself at the center of these changes, no longer the curious outsider, but a respected member of the academy community. Her insights had led to revolutionary developments in defensive strategies, and her ability to bridge the gap between human and dragon thinking had made her invaluable to the ongoing research into Shadow Realm incursions. More importantly, her relationship with Prince Theron had deepened into something that neither could deny, though they had kept their growing bond carefully private. The secrecy was necessary, because not everyone had embraced the changes at the academy. A faction of traditional dragons, led by several influential noble families, had begun to push back against what they saw as dangerous deviation from proper order. They whispered in corners about corruption of ancient bloodlines and the weakening of dragon supremacy through association with lesser species. These whispers had reached the highest levels of dragon society, including Queen Seraphine herself. Queen's summons arrived on a crisp autumn morning, delivered by a courier whose formal bearing suggested the gravity of the situation. All senior academy staff and selected students were commanded to appear before the Dragon Court within the week for what was termed a comprehensive evaluation of current policies and procedures. Everyone understood what this really meant: a trial, to determine whether the academy's new direction would be allowed to continue. Elder Saphira called an emergency assembly in the Great Hall, her ancient voice carrying clearly to every corner of the vast space. Despite her tremendous age, the Elder Dragon retained an aura of power that commanded immediate attention from every person present. "My dear students and colleagues," she began, her golden eyes sweeping across the assembled crowd, "we stand at a crossroads that will determine not only the future of this academy, but the relationship between our species for generations to come. The court will examine our methods, our results, and our philosophy. They will question everything we have built here. Jenna felt Theron's presence beside her, though they maintained a careful distance in public. His jaw was set with determination, but she could see the worry in his green eyes. As heir to the throne, he would face particular scrutiny from his grandmother and the noble court. However, Elder Saphira continued, I have lived for over 2 millennia, and I have learned that truth has a power all its own. What we have accomplished here is not mere experiment or whim, but a return to the principles that made the Great Alliance successful. We will present our case with honesty and dignity, and trust that wisdom will prevail. In the days that followed, the Academy became a whirlwind of preparation. Faculty members compiled reports on student progress, tactical innovations, and collaborative achievements. Students practiced presentations that would demonstrate the practical benefits of interspecies cooperation. Through it all, Jenna found herself struggling with a growing sense of responsibility that felt almost overwhelming. You're carrying too much weight on your shoulders, Theron told her one evening as they walked through the Academy's meditation gardens. The space was designed for contemplation, with flowing water and carefully arranged stones that helped focus draconic minds during deep thought. Everything that's happened here, it started because I was accepted as a student, Jenna replied. If the court decides this was all a mistake, how many people will suffer for it? How many opportunities for cooperation between our peoples will be lost? Change was coming whether you were here or not, Theron assured her. The old ways were already breaking down. The Shadow Wraith attack proved that our traditional isolation and superiority weren't adequate defenses against modern threats. You didn't cause this transformation. You just helped guide it in a positive direction. They paused beside a fountain whose gentle sounds provided privacy from any potential listeners. In the moonlight, Theron's features seemed to glow with an inner fire, reminding Jenna of the vast gulf between their natures, even as she felt drawn to him like nothing she had ever experienced. What will you tell the court about us? She asked quietly. The truth, Theron replied without hesitation, that I love you, that our bond makes me stronger, not weaker, that the future of our peoples lies not in separation, but in understanding and cooperation, even if it costs you the throne. Theron was quiet for a long moment, considering the weight of that possibility. Some things matter more than crowns, he said finally. Some principles are worth any sacrifice to uphold. The journey to the dragon. Court took 2 days by air, with students and faculty traveling in the protective company of senior dragons in their true forms. Jenna rode with Elder Saphira, marveling at the ancient dragon's grace and power as they soared above mountain ranges and deep forests toward the capital city of Pyria. The sight of the dragon capital took Jenna's breath away. Built into and around a massive volcanic caldera, the city rose in spiraling tiers of crystal and living stone. At its heart stood the Palace of Flames, a structure so magnificent that human architects had never even attempted to envision something comparable. Towers of crystallized fire reached toward the clouds, their surfaces alive with patterns of light that shifted like living things. The Dragon Court convened in the Hall of Judgment, a circular chamber capable of holding thousands of spectators. In tiered galleries that rose toward a dome, painted with the history of dragonkind. At the center of the space sat the throne of queens, carved from a single massive ruby that caught and reflected light in spectacular displays. Queen Seraphine presided from this seat of power, her magnificent form draped in robes that seemed woven from starlight itself. The queen was ancient even by dragon standards, and her presence filled the hall with an almost tangible weight of awe, authority, and wisdom. Her scales were deep purple shot through with veins of silver, and her eyes held depths that spoke of centuries of experience and responsibility. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated in the bones of everyone present. We gather today to examine claims that the traditional methods of dragon education and cultural preservation require fundamental revision, Queen Seraphine announced. The Academy of Fire has implemented changes that some view as necessary evolution, while others see them as dangerous departure from proven principles. We will hear testimony from all concerned parties and render judgment based on evidence and wisdom rather than prejudice or fear. The first day of proceedings focused on academic and tactical evidence. Elder Saphira presented comprehensive data, showing improved student performance, innovative problem-solving approaches, and successful integration of diverse perspectives. Master Korath, despite his initial resistance to change, testified about the tactical advantages that human insights had provided during the Shadow Wraith attack. Commander Dex, representing the human fleet, spoke about the strategic importance of cooperation between species in facing emerging threats. His military bearing and obvious competence made a strong impression on the assembled nobles, many of whom had fought alongside human forces in previous conflicts. But it was the student demonstrations that truly captured the court's attention. Dragon cadets working seamlessly with their human counterparts to solve complex tactical problems, sharing knowledge and techniques that enhanced everyone's capabilities. Zara Nightfall, despite her personal conflicts with Jenna, testified honestly about the academic achievements and innovative thinking that human students had brought to the academy. The second day brought more personal testimony, and this was where the real challenges emerged. Noble families who had sent children to the academy expressed concerns about cultural dilution and the weakening of dragon traditions. Some spoke of arranged bondings that had been disrupted by exposure to different perspectives and relationships. When Prince Theron was called to testify, the hall fell completely silent. His position as heir to the throne made his words carry weight that could influence the entire proceeding. He stood before his grandmother's throne with dignity and poise, every inch the royal prince he had been born to be. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice clear and strong. "I have spent these months at the Academy, not as an observer, but as a full participant in its programs. I have worked alongside humans, learned from their perspectives, and seen firsthand the benefits of cooperation between our species. And what of your duties to your own kind?" asked Lord Draken, one of the most traditional nobles on the council. "What of the responsibilities that come with royal blood?" "My duties are precisely why I support these changes," Theron replied firmly. "As future king, my responsibility is to ensure the prosperity and security of all dragons. The challenges we face, from Shadow Realm incursions to resource conflicts to the simple complexity of governing an increasingly connected world, require solutions that no single species can provide alone." "Pretty words," Lady Crimson interjected, her voice sharp with disapproval. "But what of more personal matters? There are rumors about inappropriate relationships that threaten the purity of royal bloodlines." The question everyone had been waiting for had finally been asked. Jenna felt her heart racing as every eye in the hall turned toward Theron, waiting to see how he would respond to this direct challenge. "My personal relationships are guided by the same principles as my political ones," Theron said calmly. "I choose based on character, intelligence, and shared values rather than species or tradition. If that threatens some concept of purity, then perhaps that concept was flawed to begin with." A murmur ran through the assembled nobles, some shocked by his boldness, others nodding in grudging approval. Queen Seraphine raised one clawed hand, and silence immediately returned to the hall. "Strong words from our heir," the queen observed, her expression unreadable. "Tell us, Prince Theron, if these new philosophies conflict with the expectations of your station, which would you choose?" It was the ultimate test, the question that would determine not only Theron's future, but potentially the fate of everything they had built at the Academy. Jenna watched from the gallery, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "Your Majesty," Theron replied, meeting his grandmother's ancient gaze without flinching. I believe that a leader who cannot adapt to changing circumstances is no leader at all. The strength of the dragon throne has always come from wisdom, not rigidity. If I must choose between personal happiness and duty, I choose both, because I refuse to accept that they must be mutually exclusive. Even if that personal happiness involves bonding with a human? The direct question hung in the air like a blade. Everyone in the hall held their breath, waiting for an answer that would reshape the relationship between their species forever. Especially. Then, Theron said quietly, and his words carried such conviction that even his harshest critics could not doubt his sincerity. Because such a bond represents the very cooperation and understanding that will define our future success or failure. Before Queen Seraphine could respond, a commotion arose from the main entrance to the hall. Guards were escorting in a group of figures that made every dragon present tense with alarm. These were representatives of the Shadow Realm, beings of living darkness whose very presence seemed to drain light from the surrounding space. Your Majesty, their leader spoke in a voice like grinding stone, we come under the ancient laws of parley to deliver a message. The dark powers stir once again. The barriers that have held us in check for centuries grow weak. Soon we will reclaim what was taken from us, and neither dragon fire nor human cunning will stand in our way. General Hawks, the senior human military officer present, stood immediately. What do you want? Nothing you can give, the shadow entity replied. We merely inform you that the time of reckoning approaches. Your petty squabbles over tradition and change will soon seem insignificant compared to the choices you will face when darkness covers the world once more. With that ominous declaration, the shadow beings vanished, leaving behind only the lingering smell of burnt ozone and the weight of impending crisis. Queen Seraphine rose from her throne, her magnificent form radiating power and determination. The Shadow Realm has declared its intentions clearly. We face a threat that will require every resource, every alliance, every innovation we can muster. She looked directly at Theron, then at the Academy delegation. This court finds that the changes implemented at the Academy of Fire are not only justified but essential. We approve their continuation and expansion. The hall erupted in surprised murmurs, but the Queen was not finished. Furthermore, we recognize that the bonds between species, whether political, military, or personal, represent our greatest strength in the trials ahead. All such bonds formed in good faith and mutual respect are hereby blessed by this court. Jenna felt tears of relief streaming down her face as she realized the full implications of the Queen's declaration. Not only had the Academy's programs been vindicated, but her relationship with Theron had been officially recognized and accepted in the days that followed. As plans were made for expanded cooperation between species and preparation for the coming conflict with the Shadow Realm, Jenna found herself appointed as the first human liaison to the Dragon Court. Her role would be to facilitate communication and cooperation between their peoples as they faced the greatest threat ever known, standing on a balcony of the Palace of Flames with Theron beside her. Watching as dragon and human forces began joint training exercises in the valley below, Jenna reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had come to the Academy seeking knowledge and acceptance. She had found love, purpose, and a role in shaping the future of two worlds. Ready for what comes next? Theron asked, taking her hand in his own. With you beside me? Jenna smiled, feeling the strength of their bond flowing between them like a river of fire and starlight. I'm ready for anything. In the distance, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, but they no longer seemed ominous. Instead, they represented challenge and opportunity, the chance to prove that love and cooperation could triumph over even the darkest forces. The trials ahead would be difficult, but they would face them together, dragon and human united in purpose and strengthened by bonds that transcended species and tradition not around them. Other couples began to emerge. Dragon and human pairs who had found love despite the odds, inspired by the courage Jenna and Theron had shown. Myra, a young silver dragon, walked hand in hand with Kai, a human engineer, their faces glowing with the same joy and determination. The future was being written in these moments, in these connections between hearts that refused to be limited by the boundaries of the past. The age of cooperation had begun, born from the ashes of ancient prejudices and forged in the crucible of mutual respect and understanding. Whatever shadows might come, they would meet them with the combined strength of all their peoples, united in purpose and boundless in hope.